Do you know the exact moment a man decides he can't stop thinking about you? It's not when you seduce him. It's not when you look flawless. And it's not even when you impress him with your intelligence. It happens when you say something that reaches a part of him no one else has ever touched. Something that speaks directly to his masculine core, the part that craves real recognition. Here's what many mature women don't realize. They hold the most powerful emotional key of all, but they've kept it hidden, shaped by years of false beliefs society placed on them. After 3 decades studying male psychology, I've discovered something important. What men say they want is often very different from what stays with them emotionally. Younger women often lead with their looks, their youth, or by being constantly available. But women who understand this hidden truth, they don't need to play that game. They operate on a much deeper level. The level of emotional impact. Let me tell you something that completely shifted the way I see things. Men walk through life in an emotional desert. A 2019 YouGov study uncovered something alarming. Over 63% of men said they rarely or never receive a heartfelt compliment. Not from friends, not from co-workers, and not even from the women closest to them. Even more striking, 81% said they could remember the last real compliment they got, even if it was given years or decades ago. Imagine living like that. Emotionally dry, unseen, and then, suddenly, someone sees past the surface. Not your money, your success, your muscles, your charm. Just you. The part of you that felt invisible for years. That's the power a mature woman holds when she learns how to give a compliment that lands. But here's the truth. Most women over 40 were taught to do the opposite. They were told to hold back, not to appear too eager, to let the man lead emotionally. Too much praise was seen as desperate, too much honesty as unladylike. So what happened? Millions of smart, kind, radiant women went through life hiding the one thing that could truly draw a man closer: sincere appreciation. And I get it. They were raised in a time where female modesty was praised more than emotional courage. Showing admiration for a man was seen as giving away your power. But that outdated mindset is what keeps women from building the kind of connection that can change everything. The gift of truly seeing a man. After years of research, I've come to this conclusion. When a mature woman recognizes a man in the right way, she doesn't give up her power, she activates it. Because that kind of emotional truth reaches places inside a man that no performance or physical charm ever could. It creates a memory, a soft spot, a moment his mind keeps returning to. And this is even more powerful when it comes from a woman your age. Why? Because your praise doesn't come from inexperience or wishful thinking. It comes from a place of wisdom, of having seen enough to know what truly matters. You don't get easily fooled. You've known real and you've known fake. When you say something, it lands with weight. In a 2021 study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, researchers studied how men responded to women of different ages and communication styles, and the results were clear. The women who left the deepest emotional impression were those who gave personal, honest compliments, not about appearance, status, or charm, but about personality, values, energy. One man in the study said something I'll never forget. A woman once told me I have a calming presence, that I make people feel safe. I couldn't stop thinking about it. No one had ever said that to me before. That one line stayed with him for days. It made him want to know her, connect with her, feel seen by her again. And this pattern repeats itself in story after story. I've seen it firsthand. Mature women constantly underestimate how powerful they are when they let themselves be emotionally open. They don't tell men when they handle something gracefully, or when their presence feels calming, or when their humor genuinely lifted the mood. So much remains unspoken. And in that silence, the chance to truly bond slips away, because the one doorway through which most men become emotionally available is recognition. Real, grounded, heart-level recognition. Let me give you a story that brings this to life. In a 2018 social experiment led by relationship coach Matthew Hussey, a group of women over 50 were asked to try something for 1 week. Each woman was to approach 10 different men and give them a compliment. But there was one rule. It could not be about looks. It had to focus on behavior, emotion, or character, something deeper than the surface. The results were stunning, so much so the team triple-checked the data. 80% of men responded with warm appreciation and curiosity. More than half kept talking, and many invited the women to connect further. Some even asked for a date. One moment stood out. A 58-year-old woman complimented a man she saw gently helping his elderly father stand up in a cafe. She said, "That moment told me everything I need to know about you. Your father is lucky to have a son like you." The man froze, then smiled, in a way she described as raw, touched, and sincere. He replied, "No one's ever said something like that to me. That really hit me." They talked for almost an hour, met again the next day, and spent 3 months getting to know each other, describing their bond as surprisingly deep. All of it began with a compliment, not about his body or job, but his heart. Here's what most women don't realize about how the male brain works. When a man hears a compliment like that, especially from a woman who radiates wisdom and warmth, his brain reacts. Chemically, a combination of oxytocin and dopamine is released. It forms what neuroscientists call an emotional anchor. His mind tags that moment as important. His heart remembers that woman as special. This isn't manipulation, it's biology. When you speak to a man in a way that bypasses ego and taps into his spirit, something in him softens, a wall comes down, a kind of invisible armor begins to dissolve. He doesn't feel the need to prove or perform, he feels free to just be. Let me be deeply honest here. Drawn from decades of clinical experience and thousands of private conversations with men, I know that the compliments that truly move a man aren't the ones that feed his surface-level ego. They're the ones that make him pause and think, "This woman really sees me. She notices things I didn't even realize someone could notice." These kinds of words go straight to the part of him that craves to be understood. Here are the specific keys you can start using in your life right away. First, the neuropsychological key: praise his actions and his values, not just his material possessions. Instead of saying, "What a nice car," say something like, "It's clear you've worked with focus and discipline to create stability for yourself. That says so much about who you are, and I truly admire that." This shifts the attention from what he owns to who he is inside, and that's the part men are genuinely proud of. Second, highlight the emotional effect he has on others. Say something like, "You have a calming presence. Just talking to you makes me feel more grounded." That's a rare gift. Most men never hear anything like that, but deep down, they long to know how they emotionally impact those around them. Third, acknowledge his personal growth and emotional insight. If he shares that he's learned something from a mistake or went through a difficult time, respond with, "It takes real maturity to be that honest about yourself." Many people avoid looking that deeply inward. Letting him know you see that in him shows that you recognize he's still evolving. For mature men, that's powerful. They often don't even realize they're still growing. Now here's what completely changed how I see this whole topic. The effect these kinds of compliments have on a man's inner world goes deeper than you might expect. Biologically, both men and women are wired for emotional connection, but most men have been raised to hide their softer emotions. They've been taught to avoid seeking approval, to act like they don't need anyone. But when a woman, especially a mature one, gives a compliment that touches something real and meaningful inside him, she disarms the shields he's used to protect himself for years. She creates what psychologists call a moment of safe vulnerability, a space where he allows himself to be seen without his usual armor. During these sincere exchanges, the brain releases a mix of dopamine, which fuels joy and motivation, and oxytocin, the chemical of trust and bonding. When a compliment is tied to emotional truth, it activates that response, anchoring the moment in long-term memory. He starts to associate that woman with a rare feeling of being emotionally safe and deeply understood. Let me share a real story that captures this perfectly. Barry, a 62-year-old executive, once shared with me something that completely changed how he viewed mature relationships. A woman in his social circle once said to him, "You're the kind of man who brings calm into a room just by walking in. That's the kind of leadership most people never even notice." Barry confessed, "That woman saw something in me I didn't even realize was visible. I couldn't stop thinking about her words. They echoed in my head for days. They made me reflect on my presence and how I want to show up in life. I just couldn't forget her." He asked her out for coffee. That conversation led to a deep friendship, which later grew into love. 2 years later, they got married, and it all began with a compliment, one that touched something invisible but real inside him. So what made that compliment so powerful? It wasn't luck or charm, it was emotional intelligence. She was a woman who had learned how to look beneath the surface and truly recognize a man's deeper qualities. And when she voiced that insight, she left an emotional imprint, a memory tied to connection and truth. I completely understand that after heartbreaks, betrayals, or failed relationships, sharing yourself in this way can feel risky, vulnerable. But mature women have a rare and priceless advantage: years of life experience that give their words a depth younger women simply can't match. When a woman your age gives a compliment, it doesn't sound like flattery or flirtation. It sounds like truth, spoken from someone who knows what's real, someone who's seen enough to tell the difference between show and substance. When that kind of emotional wisdom is expressed as sincere recognition, it becomes nearly irresistible to a man, especially a man who has spent much of his life longing to be truly seen. I've witnessed so many remarkable women miss chances at real connection because they stayed silent, because they downplayed their feelings, not wanting to come across as too much, or because old social rules taught them to hide their emotional insight. But now you have a choice. You can keep what you see and feel to yourself, or you can start allowing yourself to be noticed through compliments that rise above small talk, that cut through the noise of everyday life. You don't have to sound poetic or polished. You just need to express what you genuinely see. That alone has power. Say things like, "You listen in a way that makes people feel truly heard. That's rare." Or, "When you stood up for that stranger in the restaurant, I saw something strong and beautiful in your character. That took real courage." Or even, "You seem like someone who doesn't quit when life gets hard. That kind of inner strength really shows." These words don't cost anything. They require no money, no fancy effort, but to a man who's used to only hearing things about his clothes, his title, or his wallet, they're like finding water after wandering through a long desert. And when these words come from a woman with life behind her, a woman who sees clearly, who isn't easily fooled, the impact is even more intense. You've lived enough to notice what matters. You can see past the masks. You understand that presence is more important than performance, that resilience is more meaningful than appearance, that truth feels different than charm. Younger women might want to give that kind of recognition, but without your lived wisdom, they can't give it in the same way. Your next step is simple. Start watching the men in your life with new eyes. Don't focus on what they wear or drive. Watch how they move through the world. Look for signs of integrity when no one is clapping. Notice how they treat others when nothing's in it for them. See how they deal with pressure, how they hold space for others. When you find something honest, something that reveals their true self, say it. Just one clear sentence. It doesn't have to be long or perfect, just real. Offer the compliment, smile, stay present in that small but powerful moment of connection, and you'll be amazed by how he responds. Because men carry these emotional memories for a lifetime, not because of the words alone, but because of how those words made them feel seen in a way they never expected. And when a man feels seen by a woman with that kind of presence, he doesn't forget it. He holds on to it. often, forever. Who truly see them may not remember your outfit or your hairstyle, but they will never forget the woman who saw their soul, their real values, their quiet emotional depth in this noisy world. You, who have experienced deep relationships, rich connections, and also painful disappointments, you understand better than anyone that true emotional intimacy goes far beyond physical attraction. When you recognize that kind of depth in a man and say it out loud, you create an emotional imprint that can stay in his memory for years, sometimes decades. In a world full of shallow interactions, digital swipes, and empty small talk without real feeling, your honesty becomes something deeply valuable. It's a quiet power that only women with true life experience can offer, because they know how to use it with emotional grace and sincerity to form a connection that lasts. One powerful way to do this is to praise his emotional insight when he shows it. Men rarely hear compliments about their emotional intelligence, but when they do, it touches something very deep inside them. If you notice that he's aware of how others are feeling or shows true empathy, say something like, "You really sense what people need." That's a gift not everyone has. Compliments like that validate a side of his masculinity that the world often ignores. Another key is to acknowledge the way he creates emotional safety. If a man's presence makes you feel calm, relaxed, and grounded, if he builds that space where you can be fully yourself, tell him. Say, "Being around you feels safe, like I don't have to pretend." That's true emotional leadership. Men long to feel they can offer that kind of steady presence, especially to a woman they respect and care about. Then recognize his reliability in specific ways. Instead of only saying "you're dependable," go a little deeper. Say something like, "I've noticed that when you say you'll do something, you really follow through." In today's world, where so many promises are empty and words have lost meaning, that kind of follow-through speaks volumes. That kind of compliment touches his sense of honor. It reflects who he is as a man, who stands firmly by his word. Now let's talk about how men grow. Many mature men quietly wonder if they're still capable of change. If you notice that he's growing, learning, or adjusting his perspective, say it. "I really admire how you keep learning and shifting the way you think." That takes strength and humility. That kind of praise affirms that growing older isn't about becoming fixed. The beauty of these keys is that they don't require you to act or perform. You don't need to pretend or manipulate. All it takes is presence, truly seeing what's in front of you, and the bravery to speak from the heart. But here's something important I want to prepare you for. Once you begin using this approach, you'll notice a real shift in the way men treat you. Not just in romantic ways, but in terms of genuine respect, attention, and emotional depth. You'll leave a different kind of mark on them, a lasting one. Let me tell you a true story that beautifully shows how powerful this can be. Elena, a 52-year-old architect, came to me feeling unseen by men her age. She had been alone for 5 years after a painful divorce, and truly believed her most meaningful romantic moments were behind her. During our sessions, we worked on one simple but powerful skill: giving genuine recognition. Just 3 weeks after she started practicing this in her daily life, she met Roberto, a 58-year-old engineer, during a parent-teacher event at her daughter's school. That night, Roberto found himself in a tense moment. Another father was upset over a sports issue and becoming aggressive. Elena quietly watched how Roberto stayed calm, took the man's feelings seriously without backing down, and gently diffused the whole situation. After the event, Elena walked over to him and said, "The way you handled that was impressive. You kept your own dignity and helped him keep his too." Then she added, "That kind of emotional strength is rare. Your daughter's lucky to have such a steady example." Roberto was visibly moved. He asked for her number on the spot and later admitted that no one had ever given him such a thoughtful and personal compliment in years. 6 months later, Elena and Roberto were married in a small, heartfelt ceremony. When I asked them what changed everything between them, both pointed to that very first compliment. Roberto said, "That woman saw something in me. She saw the kind of father I'm trying to be, the kind of man I hope to become. Alina said, "When I saw his face light up from those words, I realized how much power I'd been hiding all these years." This story reveals something vital. When a mature woman consistently offers honest and thoughtful recognition, she doesn't just attract men, she awakens them. She helps them see themselves with more kindness and more clarity. And when a man feels truly seen by a woman he admires, he creates a kind of emotional bond that can last a lifetime.